Hello and welcome to the Apex Magazine podcast. I'm your host and producer, KT Brisky. What's up, listeners? How are you? I hope you're healthy and happy. I haven't lost my voice yet. You can probably hear it wants to go, but for now it's hanging on, which is good. Because, losing one's ability to communicate is quite a frightening thing. All of which is a very good segue into this month's story. And we're going back in time a little bit with this one. We're going back to episode 64. We're getting our order straight again. Listeners, I'm very pleased to present this month's story, Towards a New Lexicon of Augury by Sabrina Vourvoulias, narrated by Sandra Espinoza. So sit back, relax, and let's have a listen to episode 64.
Toward a New Lexicon of Augury by Sabrina Vourvoulias, narrated by Sandra Espinoza. Black stone lying on a white stone. I waste a hard-earned shit for public access to chase a clue that turns out to be poetry. I will die in Paris on a rainy day. Perhaps on a Thursday, as today is Thursday in autumn. César Vallejo, the author of the poem Black Stone Lying on a White Stone, was a Peruvian writer living in Spain in the 1930s when he succumbed to an infection turned totalitarian. The little I am able to read about him before the buzzer sounds and the next person in line nudges me out of the public access booth indicates that the poet's wife consulted with astrologers and wizards in an effort to cure the ailment that felled him. She should have asked the brujas instead. You want to turn counsel to cunning or wreck the world with a word? Ask the wizards. A massive malpuesto, on the other hand, calls for a witch. Or even better, more than one. The man who takes my place in the booth carries one of the enormous smartphones that were popular right before access to electricity was privatized and clean slate architecture rendered much of the web inaccessible to ordinary people like us. His still gleaming and beautiful phone is almost as useless as my battered burner these days. But we're still addicted to looking into their screens during our 10-minute slots of nostalgia. Ania says I'm crazy, irresponsible to plug in where Go Trackers and neighborhood scoutwear are deployed with juice and signal. Miss Connie and Meg are quieter in their disapproval, and Baby Girl just silently shakes her head. Their powers are so strong, they cannot understand a witch who needs to chase down clues. I tell them that it is all about the power of the proximate brilliance. You never know what a line of found poetry will illuminate. I, like Vallejo's poetic narrator, already know when and where I will die. It will be in this North American city, laid low by the Earth's uncontrolled thermostat, spinning sear to frost to sear. In a newly harsh cycle not even the greatest wizards can make right again. It will be on a Friday, in what used to be called summer. And since nature isn't likely to offer rain on its own, one of the mob's weather workers will make sure to spell a drizzle, as long as I remember to ask. And I will remember to ask, because poetry is always Gnostic, and sometimes an instruction manual, and it doesn't do to go disregarding its direction. In what language does rain fall over tormented cities? That's a line I remember from a different poet, Pablo Neruda, from a different country than Vallejo's or mine, but still from this beloved and now benighted supercontinent. The American one, where some 326 million, after having appropriated for ourselves, alone, the continental citizenship of the over 500 or so million, declared our country first and only, and were willing to curse the rest. Still, Magic Unleashed knows no borders, and on day 0, every one of us felt the backlash. Since then, every spell cast, north and south, has been about survival. The white Anglo witches and wizards in the city say, "So mote it be," to seal their magical workings. The phrase originated in England, I'm told, and was brought over by a witch hidden in plain sight among the Puritans on the Mayflower. I'm not Anglo, I'm not white, and I'm not over fond of any turn of phrase so clunky and old-fashioned it can't be part of the people's vernacular. But spellcraft does demand a seal. So here is mine. Palabra. Word. Because it all starts with words, don't you know? And ends that way, too. In the early days, Mega saved my life. That is, she saved my daughter's life, and therefore mine too. The air is bad here. Sometimes it is so thick here, it becomes visible. A blanket of particulates as warm and thick as fleece. Baby girl has asthma and went into a full-blown incident on a 110-degree morning when she was a year old. The nebulizer's battery had no juice left, and public access booths were too far from Mole Street, so I carried her limp little body and the nebulizer bag through the neighborhood, screaming for help I knew could not come. I had crossed some 3 or 4 blocks from the Latino section of the neighborhood into the Indonesian one before I stopped. In those early days, after day 0, we kept the city's historically segregated neighborhoods and didn't associate much with each other. So when I heard a loud, chugging, grinding sound, I didn't know what to expect. Certainly not the contraption that turned the corner and headed to where I stood. It was a hybrid go-kart/ATV struggling to drag a heavy trailer behind it. I caught my breath when I noticed there was a portable generator wedged in among the barrels on the rig. The vehicle stopped right in front of me, and its driver, goggles, full-length hooded vest, and thin leather chaps scarred from burns, hopped down. She didn't bother to say anything, just pulled the generator's recoil several times, and once it kicked on, plugged the nebulizer into the generator. I broke open an albuterol ampule I had traded a month's chits to get and strapped the nebulizer mask over my daughter's nose and mouth. Baby girl coughed a couple of times, then closed her eyes and breathed. "It'll need to run some 20 minutes or so," I said to the woman. "I know that means we will use a lot of your gas, but she's gotta have the full dose. I don't have many chits to give you, but I swear I will repay you in full." "I'm not worried about it," she said as she pulled off her goggles. "We make our own biodiesel." She indicated the barrels. "I was out collecting cooking oil when I heard your cries." She stuck out her hand. "I'm Mega." As we shook, she studied me. "You have the mark of a natural-born witch." The big mole on the side of my neck itched, as if it understood her words. "My skill is of the lowest order," I said. "An aptitude for augury only. Nothing as useful as healing." She chewed her lip, at the edge of which was the mole that marked her, for a bit, then seemed to arrive at a decision. "When we're done here, I'm going to introduce you to someone whose talent is all healing, all the time, because you can't count on me being around whenever your daughter needs help." But that's exactly what I've grown to do. I count on her and she counts on me. And that's the way it is with all the tias and aunties and bibis who coalesced into the Mole Street mob. Witches extraordinaire, dark women running a dark market, crunchy agents of chaos, steampunk entrepreneurs, and viejas necias. Born with the mark, the will, and a target on our backs. Anya gives me her look as soon as I get back from charging my phone. It's hard not to wither under it. Maybe it has to do with the fact that she's so much taller than me, nearly 6 feet. Or maybe it's that, with the exception of the mole peeking out from under one arched eyebrow, she is flawless. Even her locks, dyed sage green with Miss Connie's help, are perfectly uniform. She is, among other things, a street reader. She can understand and interpret every sticker slapped on honor box, pole, and post, every image chalked on the sides of trash cans and dumpsters, all the sandblasted ghosts of messages that once sprawled colorfully across buildings, even the hidden image bombs nobody else sees. There has never been an iconomancer like her. But that is not her only magic. Hania can change the juju on the street just by tracing her sigil in the air, and she can get inside your head like you are no more complicated than a doll baby. It's a rare skill. Only one other of the mob's witches can do such, and not as easily as our leader does it. If it came to it, Hania alone could perform half the workings that have earned the mob our status. She doesn't keep me wriggling under her side eye for long, thank heavens, and turns back to mashing whatever she's got in the bowl under her pitted iron pestle. Where is everyone? I ask, as I drop into one of her rickety kitchen chairs. Mega's at the workshop, supervising the titration process for the latest batch of biofuel, she answers. Miss Connie is harvesting at Parcel 5, and baby girl is hard at work on a task I gave her to learn. She stops her rhythmic pounding and looks over at me. Can you hear? When I nod, she goes on. Are you ready for Friday? Black stone lying on a white stone. I had noticed the volunteer prophecy while on my regular trash-picking route about 2 weeks ago. But I am a procrastinator. My nearest and dearest know that about me. Mostly, I say. So what exactly is it we're doing? She asks. The enormous plastic trash-to-treasure earrings baby girl creates for her auntie, Baba Little, betraying tension Honey is otherwise too cool to show. I'm still refining the plan, Hefa, I say. I try not to hear her sucking her teeth after she hears my words. Planning is not our friend. 8 years of planning led our government to day 0. And 10 years after that, our local governance is rife with planning, none of it good for our Mole Street city within a city. The Municipal Protection and Development Project, MPDP, recently broke ground on a string of residence centers intended to supplant our squats and reclaimed spaces. They say there will be some free electricity on the regular there. They say there will be filtered water that runs through the pipes at least once a week. They say the dormitory halls will be fitted with multiple built-in vents to accommodate our cook stoves because they know we take pride in our food. They promise this the same way they've always promised us, with barbs hidden in plain sight. We'll be locked in, for safety and security, every night at curfew, to be decided. Each residence block will be age-segregated for efficiency, so that transit time to school or work site or geriatric care can be minimized. Sandwiched between the residence blocks, they hope to lure a gigantic HVAC manufacturer to provide a good number of local jobs, and they'll seed hand-picked retailers and grocers, lured by both our teeming sprawl and the proposed checkpoints, loiter-free design, and security detail. No more open-air drug bazaars, they say. But we understand it'll mean no more street pulgas and night markets that bring us together to exchange chit, conjure, and chisme for self-determined need. No more nuisance properties, they say. But we know that means no more finquitas on reclaimed lots to grow our bitter melons, sumac, eggplant, and corn. No more trash-filled pocket parks, they say, which means no more commons for the mocoyumbis and the vejigantes to practice in. No more barrel fire for our old folks to gather around. No more tar, tin, and tape housing make-dos. No more blight, they say. We hear no more us. By eyes, by teeth, by stones, by howling of dogs, by nails, by dust, by dice, by spelling a name, by skulls, by birds, by flames, by the soles of feet, by oaths, by slaps, by salve, by found poetry. The litany of auguries is officially 55 stanzas long. Unofficially, those who have augury as an inborn magic will muck around with the final content to suit temperament and circumstance. I favor 3 official stanzas and 1 mob-specific, but Friday's plan will likely call for the full litany, intoned several times, with new material strategically incorporated into each repetition. I take time from fussing with line and syllable count to lure Miss Connie from one of the finquitas to her kitchen. I've asked her to look through the shelves of tincture and decoration for her strongest medicine. She walks back and forth along the shelves that fill every wall of the dimly lit space, then stops, strokes her tightly curled beard for several minutes, and shoots a hand in between 2 large jars filled with desiccated plant matter. She retrieves a tiny baby food jar. Smell? She instructs after opening it and shoving it under my nose. The only odor I can identify is wax, and when I tell her so, she shakes her head. You really have no affinity for this. I'm not healing with it, hermana. She sighs, screws the top back on. Blue root and sweet flag, and clay from digging out the first finquita. Blood of my blood, Gullah and Seminole and Mole Street. Please don't use too much of it. I'm going to do this here and now, I say, so you can monitor how much I use. Also, because I need your help. Can you get me a clear glass and some good water? Her brows shoot midway up her forehead to let me know I'm pushing the boundaries of my ask. The rain barrels scattered around Mole Street collect and store water that Miss Connie channels through a sand-gravel biofilter for soaking the plants at the finquitas. But the water we drink not only goes through that biofiltering, it is then solar heated and condensed for purity in Mega's workshop of utilities. There isn't much of it during the dry season, and every liter is precious. While Miss Connie gathers things, I rub the salve jar back and forth between warm palms to soften the contents. I remember my grandmother doing this with the blue jars of Vivaporo when I was a child. Although chiromancy is not my favorite technique of augury, it is part of my ancestry, which makes it a reliable and accurate form. I drop a tiny dollop of liquefied salve into the water, where it fans out and moves into a shape. Quick, I say to Miss Connie, before it recoagulates. Does that look like rosemary to you? She nods, then smiles. Romero, like your mother's mother. You'll be getting some spirit world help today. Nana doesn't want me to mess this one up, I say. Then I cast another drop. The words Carolina Reaper pop into my head, and Miss Connie confirms the blazing hot chili can be used both remedially and magically. The ones that follow each earn her confirmation as well. Trinidad Scorpion and Naga Viper. What, are you thinking of making a turbocharged hotfoot? Identification of Tilo, Shurema, Maypop, and African Rue follow. But when I drop the last drop into the water, I draw a blank. Nothing. No spirit world prod, no name. But Miss Connie's eyes narrow. Vandal root, if you are calling it for its magic. Valerian, if you're calling it for remedy. She moves surely midway down the shelves on the north side of her kitchen and pulls a jar filled with dark pieces of root. She opens it and gives it to me to take a whiff. Oh my God. I hand it back to her and rub my nose several times. It's like something crawled up my nostrils and died. That is really foul. So are some of the uses associated with it, she says. Do any of these plants grow at the finquitas? A few, but there is a night market tonight, and some might be found dried among the goods, she says. And others, maybe, could be secured from private sellers. Worth lots of chits, though. They'll tithe when they know it's a mob need, I say. What will mixing all this stuff together do? She thinks long before she answers. Well, it depends on the ratios and the way you intend them to be ingested or absorbed. Some are full-stop herbs that silo magical cell from mundane. Others are vermifuges that make you puke your very guts out. Valerian remedially will put you to sleep, but magically will raise spirits, seal the evilest pacts, kill someone even, if that's what you want to use it for. The point being, it all depends. After a long and uncomfortable silence, she says, I can't really picture bringing all these together in one oil or powder for us to use. Imagine it, I say. Mole Street depends on you. And so do I. I'll shape the rest of the working around what you give me. After a moment, she nods. Then she holds out her hand, and I deposit the warm little jar with what's left of her precious salve in it. Better even than the Vivaporo my Nana used back in the day. I leave Miss Connie in her kitchen, pulling the ends of her beard and mumbling about time. As in, I haven't left her enough of it. Tuesday, after my pre-dawn trash-picking route is done, Hania, Mega, baby girl, and I go on rounds. After dousing herself with one of her washes, All the color is leached out of Hania's clothes and locks, and her skin goes all sallow. Mega dons a wrap to hide her fade, and La Comadre even trades her Beast Rider leathers for calico. They both look dowdy and forgettable, and for a second, I can't recognize them. It prompts a frisson in me that passes quickly, but leaves a residue of melancholy in its place. I don't waste any magic on altering my appearance. The truth is, if you are 4'9" and over 50, most people won't notice you anyway. And baby girl is too young at 11 to draw more than just a quick glance. We're as good as invisible. Hania elbows me, points at a brightly tagged, old, disposable lighter nailed at ankle height on a crumbling curb on our way. The street foo is strong today. What does it tell you? Bank your fire, sis. The first MPDP construction site we visit is the most advanced, with the support columns high enough that the workers have started laying the lower floors. None of Mob Street's men are among the laborers who track our approach. The unions have always been mostly Anglo and white, and since trying to cut in as a jobber or honelero puts you on the fast track to either the emergency room or an internment center, there are only a few black and brown faces visible. One of the rare brown faces on a scaffolding about 8 feet off the ground hurls a couple of predictably gendered obscenities at us as we pass, and then a stunningly unpredictable one, in Spanish, at baby girl. Skinfolk ain't kinfolk, Hania says as she sees me gathering myself to strike him mute. It is one of the few skills augurs have that can be used offensively. We can swallow voices and send words into indefinite hiding in that same vast unknown from which we pluck them in prognostication. Still, Hania's comment reminds me that I need to conserve every last reserve of magic for what is coming on Friday. Restraint is hard because it involves baby girl, and I would do anything for her to reach adulthood without the psychic scars her mother and aunties bear. The good thing is that baby girl has more than just me looking out for her. Her godmother whistles a couple of notes, and I hear a cry as the sinvergüenza tumbles from his scaffolding. At the next construction site, just a huge pit in the ground, we run into Erwin and Sue, whose food cart was lost to the pit. They still have several goats tethered in an overgrown corner of one of the primary finquitas, and their scrawny chickens scratch around the paths between beds and the smaller ones. But for now, the old couple is almost as demolished as their livelihood. Why doesn't the mob put a stop to this? Sue asks when we come to stand by them for a moment. She's sweating profusely, even as she is standing still, and I find myself wishing Miss Connie were here to treat the old woman's anxiety attack with something from her cross bandoliers of remedies, powders, and oils. The mob's magic is a scalpel and a dressing, not a bomb, Hania says. If it were big and singular and destructive, the powers that be would have long ago noticed how much of it we actually wield. They would have chosen to flatten and disappear all of us from the get-go. They don't need magic to flatten and disappear us anyway, Erwin says.
Erwin, aguanta, el pueblo se levanta.
Baby girl sing-songs one of the pre-day zero rallying chants she's always coaxing from her elders' memories. Hold on, Erwin, the people are rising up. He stares at my daughter, and it's hard to tell whether his eyes are wet with rheum or unshed tears. Then he shrugs and reaches for his wife's hand. You know the mob can count on us. Mole Street regulars like Erwin and Sue don't have magic, unless you count making hella good curried goat magic. So unconditional loyalty to the mob is a form of self-preservation. Mega takes Erwin and Sue's free hands in hers and starts whistling one of the intricate Beast Rider songs she teaches those who help her on her oil collection rounds. With each note, more of the sweat dries on Sue's face, and Erwin's shoulders relax until they unhunch. The whistling, infinitely varied in form and effect, is Mega's powerful but unique magic. She's higher in the mob's hierarchy than the rest of us singletons because of the other power she taps. Science. Tonight and tomorrow, Mega tells them. Keep your phones on. We're going to fire chat everyone when we know what we'll need you to do. I can't remember the last time we used our phones, Sue says. It's probably dead. We're running the generator today until midnight, Mega says. Come by the workshop to charge it. One of the riders will help you. When we walk away from them, baby girl's amber eyes are downcast. My big-hearted little girl has no grandparents, but she loves Sue and Erwin as if they were. I can see their situation has got her on the verge of tears as we peel off from the rest to enter the evangelical mission house, where the charity food distribution is taking place this month. Mega, Miss Connie, and Hania refuse to demean themselves this way, but then none of them have children. My daughter and I pee into cups and wait while they test the urine for drugs and magic enhancers, then take a number and go sit at tables crowded with Mole Street regulars. After an hour, when our number is called, Baby girl and I follow a young woman in bright purple track shoes to the room where they have warehoused this month's distribution. "Your allotment is 5 items, she says, consulting her clipboard. It's down from last month's 6 because baby girl had a birthday in the intervening days, and each of those brings us closer to the eventual 0. Our selection of foodstuffs takes almost no time because we always pick the same things. A big bottle of cooking oil, cornmeal, rice, a bag of dried black beans, and a box of Cheerios. As we're walking home, baby girl looks up at the sky. It's empty. No sign of the rain clouds that'll need to roll in by Friday to fulfill poetic prophecy. When her eyes slide back down to meet mine, they're troubled. "Don't worry," I tell her. "I may only have one minor form of magic, but I'm good at it. Things will happen as I say they will." "That's not why I'm worrying," she says. We both pretend not to notice the quaver in her voice. Once upon a time, a long time ago, in the first year after day 0, and as the inaugural working of the Mole Street mob, we built a table. It is enormous and round, and made from an old oak tree that had stood in front of the school for 100 years before wild lightning took it down. The table was built by hands, scorched by nature, and smoothed by magic. It is beautifully dark, and its surface is without visible flaw. It takes up almost an entire room on the bottom floor of the building. City officials have been led to believe it is the seat of the Mole Street mob's power. On Friday morning, I am seated at it, across its expanse from the municipality's powerful, who have come to us in a show of magnanimity, after having directed law enforcement agents to raid our streets and homes yesterday. Half of Mole Street's men and boys are gone today as a result. The dignitaries brought their toady witches with them this morning, and won't set foot inside our meeting room until the women sweep it for wands and anathemes, candles and salt and wine, baleful incense pouring out of censers, or preemptive spells hanging in the air. Any sign that the mob might attempt to ceremonially ensorcel them during the meeting. Their witches find and sense nothing, of course. Just me waiting, short, fat, and looking like their children's nannies. Easily read as a mere augur, and no threat. After the administrative coven leaves, the 4 people who face me are all men. The wizard in their company is gigantic, nearly 7 feet tall, as big around as the oak we felled for the table, with a voice as extravagant as his corpus. His skin and hair are very pale and luminously perfect, the effect of a minor glamour, and that is more intimidating than anything else. You've got to have power to burn to waste it on vanity. And he does. He's not just any wizard. He's also the city's lexicographer of magic, reputed to have named, defined, categorized, and practiced every form of sorcery and spellcraft contained in Eastern North America's repository of grimoires. I've seated us in a 5-pointed star, with me the apex, and the wizard at the symbolic weak left foot. The pentacle is not part of the mob's vernacular, but the wizard lexicographer would have expected no less at a meeting like this. "I don't understand the resistance we've encountered in Mole Street," complains the urban planning director, left arm of the star. "The housing we propose to create will offer significantly improved dwellings for the majority of you, and the inconveniences will be minor. Nothing that breaks up our families is minor," I say politely. He expels a loud breath. "I really thought all of you would be lining up to thank us. Instead, we have to deal with vandalism and incident after incident of petty magic." "Death by 1,000 cuts," the wizard says, then smiles at me. "The strategy of the cunning." "Or the weak," the police commissioner cuts in. He is seated at the right arm of the star we've formed around the table. and his buzz-cut, sober face and dark outfit give him the aura of a cleric, except for the sharp, decidedly martial metal insignia on his chest. His skin is only a bit lighter than Hania's, but he has chosen to wield their kind of power, not ours. Even petty actions merit response, he adds after a moment. We know there are those among you with the predisposition to engage in crime, magical and non-magical. We got some of them yesterday, but not all. He pushes 8 separate documents across the table. 8, the number of fate. We'd like your help, Alba, he says. We were unable to locate these people yesterday to bring them in for questioning. If you turn them over to us within the next few days, it will benefit you. He pushes an additional paper my way, bringing the total to 9, the number of what is set to materialize, and I feel the hard push of his will slide across with it. As you can see from the last, if we are forced to follow this plan all the way through, this whole section of the city will be effectively neutralized. I edge the reports closer, glance at them long enough to see that the information must have come from a Mole Street resident, and that almost all of the inner circle of the mob is the target. The mayor, right leg of the star, looks at the wizard, then at me. Don't confuse anger for insurrection, Alba. There is no chance whatsoever that the mob can pull all the varied interests in Mole Street together to prevent this. From what we understand, there is a substrata of rogue entrepreneurs here who cut into the profits from the mob's dark market, just like your dark market cuts into the profits of our great city. Like calls to like, I guess. He sees me start, then sighs. His instinct in magic, like the police commissioner's, is compulsion. Only he swaddles his with concern and pity. Look, we have no desire to deprive your people of the small workings you must perform to survive here. God knows, even we need magic to make life viable. So please understand us, Alba. We don't want to neutralize this sector. We wouldn't be meeting with you now if that were the case. We don't even want to divest Mole Street of all its leadership. You will notice your name is not among those called to report on Monday. He waits a moment for the words to sink in, then continues. I am told that the mob is a skill-based hierarchy, and your position will be much enhanced by the removals we have proposed. There will be no one left with more magic than you, am I right? No, but I don't say it because the mob has had the foresight to hide the knowledge of the powers of one of our strongest witches from all but the inner circle. There are no arrest papers for her on the table. We can look the other way while you do whatever you need to do to secure your spot at the top, the police commissioner prompts. The wizard leans forward. Alba, your name means dawn, doesn't it? And that's what we'd like to see you help us usher in here. A new dawn, in which the administrative witches and wizards collaborate with the wild talents to the benefit of all. I can help you. Truly. He places a pen neatly in front of him, then splays and flexes his fingers as if he's sprinkling me with water. Take it. If your informant was worth their pay, you must already know I have none of the stronger inborn magics, I say. And you can surely guess that I have neither the education nor the chits to acquire telekinesis by other means. Try, he encourages. I get the pen to skitter across the surface of the table with the mere flicker of thought. But when I flex my will to try to pull the papers closer, they don't budge. An unlimited version of that power, or others more useful in wresting dominion if you encounter opposition, can be made available to you once you are formally sworn to our enterprise, the wizard says. Think of your daughter, the mayor adds. And I do think of baby girl. She mastered 2 of her 5 and 8 magics before she was 4. Yo, good lady, look at what our girl here can do, Hania had called to me as baby girl, with nothing but instinct and inclination to prank, held an open bottle of our good water inches above her auntie's head. The child hadn't slipped once or spilled a drop. There is a loud clap of thunder heard even in this inner room of the ruined building. Then the quickly escalating patter of rain falling on the sad alleys and structures of Mole Street. Magically induced rain falls with beguiling randomness, blessing some, blighting others, like the Cheerios fall when baby girl cast them in the first and still favorite form of augury she invented. You are right, I say. What I reluctantly do, I do for my daughter. I rise unsteadily and make my way to the police commissioner. I rub my hand on my leggings to wipe off the sweat beading visibly on my palm, then extend it to him. He scrutinizes me for long moments. I think he would have trusted me more if I had whipped out a blade and tried to off him. But even he has had to choose expediency over community sometime, hasn't he? Finally, he shakes my hand, and I move on to the next. Rub, shake, skeeve out, step jostle, repeat. The mayor looks at me with genuine concern when we shake. You are quite flushed and damp. Are you feeling unwell? Menopause, I say. Hot flash. Even a wizard's magic can't control that sort of bodily portent, can it? I ask the lexicographer, who is next in my circumnavigation. He looks a bit nauseated by the topic, and insists I rub the sweat off my hands an extra time before shaking. A double dose, then. The planning director isn't interested enough to meet my eyes when I go to shake with him, so his fingertips are the only part of his hand that meets mine. Half dose, but I recognize a fellow weakest link when I see one. By might and by magic, here in all worlds, by this working you bind yourself to us, Alba. Your well-being is tied to ours, your very future to our own, the lexicographer intones as soon as every hand has been shaken. By this working I bind myself to you, my well-being to yours, my very future to your own, I repeat. I feel their spell bear down heavily, and all the rubbing I've done the ointment-impregnated leggings Miss Connie gave me to wear have become unbearably hot and prickly. Sweat pours off more than my hands as I stagger to take my seat again. My blouse is particularly soaked through. The wizard and planning director, heads ducked in urgent whispered conversation with the mayor, don't notice, but the police commissioner does. He looks like he's trying to figure out whether sweating is some sort of magic he and his know nothing about. Clearly, not enough women in their ranks. The commissioner's hand goes reflexively to the metal insignia on his chest when he notices me watching, and he makes a show of running his finger along the badge's sharp edge. For a moment, I do nothing. Then I wink at him. Surprise turns his mouth into an O. By O's. Now to seal the spell, the wizard says, looking up. At his words, every man at the table quickly plants both hands firmly on its surface, exactly 5 inches apart. 5. A sober number befitting businessmen and authorities investing in their future. I slap my hands down on the table too, leaving some 2 feet between them, and then drag them along the surface until they are the requisite number of inches apart. By slaps. The marks left by my damp palms and fingers are paths, chemtrails and wakes in the sea of circumstances that have brought me here, to this moment when I will lose myself, and those I love. By salve. So mote it be, the wizard's voice fills the room. So mote it be, the mayor and police commissioner echo. And a beat later, the planning director remembers to chime in too. In what language does rain fall over tormented cities? I say. Their puzzled, then suspicious eyes meet mine. By found poetry. So mote it be, I say. As soon as the magical contract is sealed, the tension drains out of the room, and the weight of the spell eases into something I can live with. Baby girl's voice in my head continues with the last of the litany of auguries. By bar, by block, by gag, by words left unsaid. Palabra. In this ruined room, and around this majestic table, there is an unbreakable silence. The first one to understand is the wizard lexicographer. All of our words have been secreted away from us, not to be recovered until some witch recites the litany of auguries in exactly the way Baby Girl has done, from remote and telepathically, today. The men try to move their hands off the table to claw at their mouths, but their fingers and palms will not budge. I have been careful at every rising and seating not to disturb any of the serial O's gummed under the edge of the table. A circle to bind and contain, and I am as immobilized as my guests. I have no doubt at all that I will succumb first to the power of the ointment Miss Connie created and I transferred from leggings to palms to outstretched hands. But sooner or later, all of us at the table will burn from the inside out until we disgorge all the inborn and acquired magics nestled in our hearts and hooked onto our livers and spleens. Assuming any of us survive, when our spirits finally settle back into our skins, we will not be the same. We will be regulars. The wizard, I can tell, is still struggling to understand why neither he nor the administrative witches recognized the telltales of magic before our trap was sprung on him. If I could, I would tell him that their lexicon has never included the likes of us, or our humbly quotidian methods of conjure. I hear the chugging and clanking of the beast approaching, and hear the whistling of its riders. I smell the aroma of Erwin's freshly curried goat and jerk chicken, and Sue's brown sugar glazed yams. All of Mole Street will be pouring out in the streets, in fire chat incited festival mode, dancing between raindrops to the 11/4 time our live mixers favor in music, blessing their bowls of free food and the mob who prompted it. Their energy amplifies and signal boosts the mob's magic, as it always has, from our very first act of collective resistance. But more importantly, it serves as cover. The police commissioner's men are out there over-policing the mob's mob, and too busy to notice their boss has been in here longer than expected. The strange pharmacopoeia racing through my bloodstream makes my heart skip a beat. And on its way to mess with my brain, it causes my eyes to burn and tear so profusely I'm functionally blind. I hear Mega enter the room first, whistling, of course. Miss Connie follows, the little glass bottles of her bandoliers clinking with each step. Shortly after that, I recognize Hania's thread. Then, more footfalls as remaining members of the mob crowd into the room. I vomit something thin and acidic onto the back of my hands and through my fingers onto the table. All of my magic is in that spill of bile. I hear the men around me retching and gagging too. After this, there is still more that Miss Connie's herbs, Mega's whistling, and Hania's sigils will force us to disgorge. Memories, one by one, until we are left like newborns, without marker of identity or experience. At that vulnerable moment, the mob will shape us to their powerful wills and restore what is needed to allow us to take our places in the world again. Only this time without magic, and with the survival and well-being of Mole Street as our immutable priority.
Mama, aguanta.
Baby Girl sends the rallying cry with her telepathy, but also roots around in my head for an answer to the question that has plagued her since I first outlined my plan. When the change is completed, will love survive? I am holding on to you with nail, tooth, and claw, Baby Girl. I want to say it to her, but even at the peak of my powers, I couldn't send messages, only receive them. And soon enough, I can't remember why I want to say the words, or to whom, or why the intrusive voice in my head won't shut up. My eyes begin to clear, and I can see slicked hands planted before me on the table. Are they mine? I can't tell, but maybe not, because they don't respond to my attempts to move them. The voice inside my head has started chanting, which is irritating because the rhythm of the words is off, as if a regular syllable count is beyond the voice's ken. Whatever is prompting the words remains a mystery to me, but something's come clear. I am alive because the words and the voice are willing it, because the words and the voice love me, and maybe that's all that matters right now. The voice in my head is joined by another, and as they repeat, it becomes an infinite canon. By plan, by conjure, by women and children, by what we bring to the table. Palabra.
Sabrina Vourvoulias, www.sabrinavourvoulias.com, is an award-winning Latina journalist whose work has appeared at PRI's The World, The Guardian US, Philly.com, and Philadelphia Magazine, among others. After years of adhering to AP style and juggling the conventions of English and Spanish language journalism, she turned to speculative fiction. Her short fiction has appeared at Uncanny Magazine, Tor.com, Strange Horizons, GUD Magazine, Crossed Genres, and is upcoming in Apex Magazine, as well as in numerous anthologies. She is also the author of Ink, a near-future, immigration-centered dystopia which draws on her memories of Guatemala's armed internal conflict and of the Latinx experience in the United States. It was named to Latinidad's Best Books of 2012, and was reissued by Rosarium Publishing in September 2018. She lives in Pennsylvania with her husband, daughter, and a dog who believes she is the one ring to rule them all. Follow her on Twitter at @followthelead, that's L-E-D-E, and on Facebook at official Sabrina Vourvoulias. Sandra Espinoza is a New York-born and raised voice actress trained at Edge Studios and Shut Up and Talk. Being Spanish bilingual with a background in English literature, she has always been fascinated with what people are saying and the broad palette of ways to say it. After a childhood where video games were banned from the house, she's 180'd so hard that she's finally in them and never leaving. Some games Sandra's voiced for include Heroes of Newerth, Marvel's Avengers Academy, and the critically acclaimed Wadjet Eye Games point-and-click adventure game Unavowed as Mundana. Get to know her at dustyoldroses.com and follow on Twitter and Facebook at dustyoldroses. The landmark anthology series of international speculative fiction returns, with Volume 5 of the apex book of World SF. Chris Jurado joins series editor Lavi Tidar to highlight the best speculative fiction from around the world. Cyberpunk from Spain, Singapore, and Japan. Mythology from Venezuela, Korea, and First Nations. Stories of the dead from Zimbabwe and Egypt, and space wonders from India, Germany, and Bolivia, and much more. The 5th volume of the groundbreaking World SF Anthology series reveals once more the uniquely international dimension of speculative fiction. Available from online vendors and apexbookcompany.com. Music in this podcast included Anguish, Reaching Out, Soaring, and Spring Thaw, all by Kevin MacLeod and licensed under the Creative Commons Attribution License. For more information, please visit www.incompetech.com. This podcast is copyright 2019 under Apex Publications. For more great stories like this one, visit www.apex-magazine.com. Thanks for listening. See you next time.